Good evening. I want to apologize up front that right after I get through speaking, I'm going to have to go leave because I'm speaking somewhere else right after here. But that was scary. It really was. Article 8, Section 1 of the Constitution of Georgia states, "The provision of an adequate public education for the citizens shall be the primary obligation of the state of Georgia. Public education for the citizens prior to college or post-secondary level shall be free and shall be provided by taxation. The expense of other public education shall be provided in such a manner and in such an amount that may be provided by law." As most of you know, I'm J.C. Cunningham, and I'm running for State Representative, District 175. On November the 6th, voters in Georgia will be asked to vote on a very, very, very important ballot question, which states, shall the Constitution of Georgia amend and allow state or local approval of public charter schools upon the request of local communities? Now, I ask you, why is this amendment necessary when local approved charter schools are already constitutional? Because I just read that to you. It's already constitutional. Because the passage of this amendment has nothing to do with granting local approval. If approved by voters, it will give state officials full legal authority to create and fully finance with state money local charter schools, even over the protest of local elected school officials. The passage of this amendment, House Bill 1162, would authorize the legislature and the governor to establish a private committee with the power to approve applications for charter schools, thus taking the power and decisions making from local school systems. I'm opposed to this amendment because it is designed to overturn the Georgia Supreme Court decision which ruled that the power to create charter schools belongs to local school boards, not the state. I am also opposed to this amendment because taxpayer dollars, and I repeat, taxpayer dollars should never fund for private, for-profit charter or special schools. The proposed amendment is about who creates and controls our schools. Our local school boards, which answer only the parents and taxpayers, now control whether charter schools are created. That's called accountability. It's called good common sense. Those who live and pay taxes in their communities know best what our kids need in our communities, not the bureaucrats in Atlanta. A systems of checks and balances is already in place to ensure the needs of all of our students are met. The proposed constitutional amendment would get rid of that accountability. State-controlled charter schools will cost an additional $430 million in state funds. Now, Georgia has already cut nearly $5.6 billion from our education over the last 9 years. Passage of this amendment would require a shift in funding that would result in larger class sizes, shorter school days, more teacher furloughs, layoffs, and worse, more local taxes to each one of us so that we can supplement that loss. Now I want to give you 5 reasons why all Georgians should vote against this amendment. 1, because out-of-state corporations are paying for this campaign. That's the first one. It creates a new Atlanta-based government bureaucracy. 3, the new commission will be filled by appointments done by politicians, not the citizens. Georgia already has 200 charter schools, and we've already proven that the appeal process works. And 5, a yes vote would, as I said earlier, cost us an additional $430 million, while most of our schools can't even work a full year as it is, which right now is 180 days. Currently, the average in Georgia is right at 171 days. There are 3 school systems in Georgia that are only doing 160 days. So that's a lot of curriculum that our students are losing. The only reasoning that I can tell you that proponents have been giving us is school choice. And again, they already have school choice. We have school choice. The only new things about Amendment 1 is higher costs and unnecessary state bureaucracy. We don't need to change our Constitution so out-of-state charter corporations can make profit on our students. I believe, and I've been saying from the very beginning, you must follow the money. Kind of like the movie told us. I think if we follow the money, we'll get to the root of this. So let's follow the money a little bit. Check out the groups promoting charter schools and high state testing and policies that link teachers' evaluations to test scores. In particular, who's on the board of education reform? Why are huge interests in Wall Street and hedge funds, managers and big real estate moguls, what are they doing in charter schools? Well, what are their connections between education reform, Stand for the Children, CAN, a host of other groups promoting privatization? What are they doing? Also, New School Venture Fund and the big foundations like Bill Gates and the Waltons. And another interesting thing I was reading about this morning, there's not another high-performing nation in the United States that's even proposing anything this ridiculous. And that should tell us something right there. When you follow the money, follow the money taken by corporate interests that controls our local politicians, they control our legislatures, and most of all, they control our governor. Policymakers pushing charter school expansion ask taxpayers to overlook the business side, but they don't give us a good reasoning on how we're going to compensate for that money to spend in our classrooms. Now, I know you only told me 5 minutes, but if you would indulge me just 2 more minutes. Some of you may have already read this, but every time I read this statement done by the state school superintendent, Dr. John Barge, I just feel inspired. One, I feel inspired because he's a Republican, and when he made that statement, he knew it put his political career at risk, especially with the Republican-controlled legislature. But I have a great amount of respect for him, and I want to just read something that he said when he had to take his website down because they said it was that it was unused or improper use. So he started his own website, his own blog, and I just want to read this to you. He says, I fully support the continued creation of high-quality charter schools for Georgia students. But after careful consideration and what is best for all Georgia students, I have decided to take a position in opposition to the constitutional amendment that will be on the November 6th ballot. Until all of our public school students are in school a full 180 days, until essential services like student transportation and student support can return to effective levels, and until teachers regain jobs with full pay for a full year, we should not direct or redirect $1 more away from Georgia local school districts, much less an additional $430 million in state funds, which is what it would cost to add 7 new charter schools per year over the next 5 years. And he has in parentheses that the annual average of the Charter School Commission that would be revived if the amendment passes. Now, what we were talking about in the conference call last week was that those numbers, because of the population, those numbers can definitely adjust. And what our legislature did that we have not talked about a lot is they actually passed a funding mechanism before we passed the actual charter school amendment. That's on House Bill 797. But it's only the only way you can really calculate those numbers until we can actually get the amendment passed or defeated. That's why we have to go back to revisit that data. I cannot support the creation of a new and costly state bureaucracy that takes away local control of schools and unnecessarily duplicates the good work already being done by local districts, the Georgia Department of Education, and the State Board of Education. What's more, this constitutional amendment would direct taxpayer dollars into the pockets of out-of-state, for-profit charter school companies whose schools perform no better than traditional public schools and locally approved charter schools, and worse in some cases. I trust our school districts will continue to approve only high-quality charter schools for Georgia students. I am committed to working with all school districts to ensure that high-quality applicants are not being denied locally, including mediating between high-quality charter school applications and any local districts that are reluctant to approve them. I think it just took a lot of courage for him to come forward for the betterment of the citizens of the state of Georgia. And I will tell you that right now, Grady County, on the other side of Thomasville, they're going through the charter school, the actual public charter school. It's going really well. They've gone, and it looks like about 6 of their schools are going to go to charter. Cartersville, Georgia, they have a charter system, public charter system, not a for-profit, but a for-charter. Matter of fact, their high school is actually a charter school. I do believe that when a community comes together and it's done for the purpose of the community, that charter schools could benefit. But I think we have to be honest about why we're looking at charter schools. If we have a group of children that aren't getting the things that they need, and let's just say since we're right at Moody Air Force Base, they're really into aeronautical engineering, and you want to devise a school that can facilitate that type of learning or that type of curriculum, then I think it's one of the greatest things in the world, as long as it's funded locally. As long as it's still controlled, and they're still controlled about how many days they're going to be in school, you're going to ensure that the teachers that's performing these tasks are certified teachers. Now, I went on a website the other day, and there's about 4 or 5 charter school websites looking for teachers, and not one of them asked about a degree. There wasn't anything about a degree at all. They were just asking, did you have a background in this area? Now, we can't allow that. We can't allow for folks that have worked for 4, sometimes 6, 8 years to get degrees and they have specialties to now lose their jobs and lose their health insurance because you allow a for-profit corporation that let anybody walk off the street in New York. Matter of fact, they just fired a guy from a charter school. I think I sent it to Stephanie because he was a pedophile. He was a sex offender, and he had no college degree either. But we can't. But they don't worry. That's not their concern. Their concern is about profit. And anytime you have large corporations that are trying to get involved in our schools, we need to be very worried, especially private. We have, and what's really ironic is, I keep hearing whenever I go to legislature, they're saying that we want to keep government. We want to keep government small, but all we're doing is increasing it. So I thank you for allowing me. Again, I'm sorry I won't be able to hear everyone speak, and I hope that everyone get out and vote on November the 6th, okay? Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to have Charles try to scare everyone with monetary policy. I want to thank J.C. Cunningham for coming. Take time out of his schedule. I kind of feel like Kyle set up to fail there after they only hired Gunn, but here we go. I'm going to be brief, less than 5 minutes. Again, Thank you all for coming. It's kind of awe-inspiring to look out and see literally tens of people. But no, a general disclaimer, I was not the first choice. It was supposed to be Brandon giving this speech. Brandon Benedict Arnold Corbett. And I'm not sure exactly what he did to be a traitor. A wedding, so something like that. But you tell that to this little guy. All right, another kind of making excuses here. You can probably tell I'm a little under the weather today. What you probably couldn't tell is my dog's grandfather was just hospitalized. They're thinking it may be heartworms. So that's no good. I do want to bring a little bit of levity to the situation. As he discussed, the film is quite frightening. RB, I'm pretty sure, owns some stock in Fruit of the Loom and Haynes or something, because he'll get me in business a little bit later. But I could carry on with some more silliness. But before Brandon did leave, he left me with this article that he was going to speak on, so I'll talk on that a little bit. 10 things that every American should know about the Federal Reserve. Luckily, my honeypot. We have some cheat sheets here. I don't know if they are in invisible ink. Right here. Flip it. All right. Excerpt which the word is this Norwegian? Okay. Flip it again. Okay. 10 things that every American should know about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a privately owned banking cartel. The Federal Reserve System is a perpetual debt machine. It keeps the film talked about it some. Again, I'm pretty sure they're never going to ask me to do this again, and that's just as well. But, the Fed has destroyed more than 96% of the value of the dollar since its institution in 1913. Fed can bail out whoever it wants with no accountability. The Federal Reserve is paying banks not to lend money. Apparently they send it into the Fed to increase their reserves, and they get them there you go, interest on that. The Federal Reserve creates artificial economic bubbles that are extremely damaging. The Federal Reserve is dominated by the big Wall Street banks. It is not an accident that we saw the personal income tax and the Federal Reserve System both come into existence in 1913. They're linked. The article goes into this. It's the Business Insider, and I'll pass it around. I think Brandon would mind that afterwards. The reason I'm kind of rushing through this is I'm quite certain everyone out there knows more about this than I do. So, the current Federal Reserve Chair, Ben Bernanke, has a nightmarish track record of incompetence. The Federal Reserve has become way too powerful. And with my own, just looking on YouTube, Aaron Russo's Freedom and Fascism, good film, goes over some of this stuff. Bill Stills, a different take than Ron Paul. He supports a fiat money system, but with no fractional reserve. The Money Masters, Secret of Oz, several good films with him. The whole Money is Debt series is interesting, worth looking into. And I'm a sucker for Alex Jones for any of this stuff, so Infowars.com, check that out. Thank you all.
And now we have the Sploss King, Nolan, coming up, Nolan Cox.
Well, I hope the Liberty Conference grows. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak. And I was thinking about liberty today. What would I say? And it's interesting that we're holding a conference on liberty. Liberty is most precious when you're losing it. It's kind of like an umbrella. You really need it when it rains. Otherwise, it's just something to wag around. And I think the fact that we're assembled here is because we're losing our liberties. In the Declaration of Independence, it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal." They didn't say you'd die equal. It said you were created equal, equal opportunity. And they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness in legal terms includes property. When you get your paycheck, it should be yours, not an obligation to the government. Our founding fathers included no income taxes in the original Constitution. Graduated income tax is a Marxist ideology right out of the Communist Manifesto. When I was a sophomore in college, I wrote a thesis on Karl Marx. And I got an education during that research that has stuck with me all of my life. Marxism is a wonderful theory. It just is contradictory to human nature, and it won't work. Look at Cuba, look at Russia, look at North Korea. The poorest places on earth is where the Marxist theory is most widespread. Freedom and liberty for you to choose to pursue whatever endeavor you want to pursue and to compete in the marketplace of products and ideas is what has made America great. You know, we're looking at charter schools. You've got a state monopoly on education. Monopolies cannot excel because there's no competition. If they fail, they get paid. If they work, they get paid. And you can't have an increase in growth and ideas and productivity without competition. It's just essential. It's just like the food chain. Eat or be eaten. It's cruel, but that's the way it's designed. And out of that cruelty comes success and comfort for everybody. It's each person seeking their individual desires, not some corporation tapping you in the 3rd or 4th grade to grow you up to run a certain machine or something like that. Humans are not cogs in an industrial production. They are individuals made in God's image to pursue the gifts and the inclination He has put in each one of us. And without that freedom and liberty, you're going to be in bondage. And we have lived in the freest society in the world since mankind has been known. They say that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That's us. I don't consent to the SPLOST tax, and I have a right to oppose it. I don't understand why anyone would vote themselves a tax. This city and county grew, developed, prospered for 114 years without a SPLOST. They started in 1987. The SPLOST we have now has been in effect, and it was instituted by the government lying to the people, telling you that over half of the tax is paid by visitors. That simply is not true, and I have challenged them on that, and they can't prove it. Your tax, in my budget, my house and cars are paid for. The biggest item in my budget is utilities. I've got tax on electricity, natural gas, telephone, cables, cell phones, plus in the marketplace here in the county, Manufacturers pay tax. PCA told me they pay about $1 million a year in sales taxes from stuff that they buy. Those are not retail sales taxes. They're sales taxes. Now they quote a figure, the city does, from retail sales pull factor. It doesn't include the items that I mentioned that you buy, nor construction purchases, nor wholesale purchases. They have been lying for 20 years, and we've been believing them, and no one has challenged them. I have challenged them, and they cannot prove their position. So, people are greedy. They want something for nothing, and they have made people believe that you're getting the visitors' money. The people that visit our county is paying over half of the sales taxes. From the best, I went to Georgia Power and got their sales tax receipts that they pay the city and county, which is about $4 million a year. Colquitt Electric pays about $1.5 million. That's $5.5 million. The total sales tax that's collected each year is about $25 million. Just those two companies are paying over 20% of it, and they're trying to make me believe that people coming from out of town, what they spend is overriding what I pay every month in my utilities. It just can't be true, and it's not true. So what we need is a leadership in this county. And I sent them an email. I said, look, you're driving forward full speed, pedal to the metal, looking in the rearview mirror. We're in a recession. What you do in a recession is not what you do in a vibrant economy where just about anything will work. It's like a train going downhill. You got two engines pulling 150 cars. It runs good downhill. When you start uphill on an incline, that's what a recession is. Things are harder. Business is slowed down. You can't run that train uphill and keep adding more cars onto it and cutting down the fuel supply and cutting down the air supply to the engine. A train is a good example of a business person. Diane and I run a business. We've got 11 employees who have altogether about 20 dependents, so there's about 30 people dependent on what we do. We're the engine of that little train. Now, some trains are bigger and have more engines to them. But my point is, if you stifle me, I'm paying over 60% in income taxes, sales taxes, state taxes, and there's no incentive. I could hire more people and expand my business if I could keep my money and invest it. But I can't. I'm giving it to somebody else to spend. You just look at what the government does with your money. Locally, this SPLOST tax, I don't need to spend $500,000 of my tax money to redo an alley downtown. It's going to be so hot in that alley in the summertime, you're not going to be able to stay in it. I mean, it's hot under those big oak trees on the courthouse square where it's open. You get in an alley, but that's where they want to spend $500,000. They want to put a farmer's market downtown. Look, we got 2 farmer's markets south of town. We got umpteen grocery stores here that sell all kind of produce. We don't need a farmer's market. But somebody wants a farmer's market, and it's only $500,000. We're paying over $1.2 million a year in rainwater runoff fees. Anybody with a roof or a driveway that owns property is paying a runoff fee, about $1.2 million a year. They've been doing that for 8 or 9 years, plus they want another $3.5 million for drainage issues. Look, we're still paying $1.2 million a year every year. So what I see is people, it's kind of like the government. If you don't spend it, you lose it. They could have easily put in for a 2-year SPLOST, bought a library for, they say, $13 million, buy an auditorium for $20 million, and have 17 million left over for a bonus. Run it for 2 years, shut it off, give the people a break. But they won't do that. They want to run it for 6 years and buy every imaginable thing that you can think of. They used to rebuild their heavy equipment in the city like private industry does. Now they put new ones in. They dispose of the old ones and put new ones in. That, you know, I'm driving a truck out there with 150,000 miles on it. I consider it half wore out. They would consider it a wreck. But nobody's buying trucks for me. I have to buy them myself. So I would encourage you to vote no on this tax. I've got some flyers outside, a thing that I sent out that goes through all of the reasons not to do it. Government cannot control its desires. When the city sent out their requests to their departments, they got back $261,500,000 worth of needs reported back that they needed. Now the total budget for this SPLOST is $25 million a year for 6 years, or $150 million for the city and county. But just the city wanted $261 million from their various departments. There is no end. You know, I could give you a tablet and let you make a list of everything you wanted. The problem is, I'd be responsible for buying it. I told a guy that works in the city, I said, it's like sending y'all to see Santa Claus at the mall, and you go out there and sit on his knee and tell him everything you want. The problem is, I have to pay for it. And if your kids went out to the mall and told Santa everything they wanted, and then Santa gave it to them and sent you a bill, you'd be bankrupt. So, vote against the SPLOST. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And so now Diane, his counterpart, is going to blast you with some more information that you might not want to hear.
I'm Diane Cox, and I'm one of the founders of the Valdosta Tea Party. And my topic tonight is get us out of the UN and get the UN out of the US. The United Nations was created in 1945 in the wake of World War II. People were tired of war, and they fell for the idea of an international debating society where diplomats give speeches and hopefully everybody gets along and wars are prevented. But just the opposite has happened, and we've had more wars. I feel like we have been in perpetual war. I think many of you agree with that. The annual dues for America to the UN, it costs U.S. taxpayers a whopping $2 billion just for annual dues. In addition, there are also voluntary payments. And in 2010, the U.S. paid $7.7 billion to the UN. And the U.S. pays an estimated 27% of all UN expenses and more than all of the other permanent members of the Security Council combined. Now, what are we getting from the UN? We get insulted by visiting dictators like Hugo Chavez and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and we get to witness corruption and kickbacks on a grand scale. Corrupt diplomats siphon billions of dollars in phony programs like Oil for Food and supposedly rebuilding Haiti after the earthquake. Falsely called a peacekeeper, the UN fails in the face of evil, and examples of that have been Kosovo and Rwanda. United Nations employees are paid twice the wages of private Americans, and former UN Secretary General Bubugali said that perhaps half of the UN workforce does nothing useful. Now, the UN is worse than a wasteful, bloated paper tiger, as some have called it. The 50% of UN workers who are busy are writing treaties and agendas that put our freedoms and property rights in jeopardy. And these are just some of the UN treaties pending confirmation by our US Senate. There's one called the UN Rights of the Child, which abolishes parental rights. The UN Small Arms Treaty, that abolishes our U.S. Second Amendment to the Constitution to keep and bear arms. The UN Law of the Sea Treaty, which gives UN bureaucrats control over all waters of the planet. That's over and under all surface of all waters. Plus, they want a portion of the mineral and oil royalties produced off of our shores. UN taxes on the internet and on all financial transactions worldwide have been discussed for quite a few years now, and those seem to always be proposed. Now, United Nations Agenda 21, adopted in 1992 at their Earth Summit, but never ratified by our U.S. Senate as a treaty, is nevertheless being written into soft law. The definition of that is the regulations written by bureaucrats at the EPA, HUD, FEMA, HHS, and other government agencies. And it's the 2009 executive order of President Obama mandating every federal department and agency adopt a sustainable development plan. So what is sustainable development? It hides behind names like smart growth, green this and green that, and it's explained in a 40-chapter book called Agenda 21. And this is a quote. This is a quote from Rosa Quar, who is my new hero, who has written the book called Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21. This is a book that we have given wide distribution and is one of the best currently available. Rosa says that it is the action plan to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all means of production, all information, all energy, and all human beings in the world. Now, I have reprinted a handout from Rosa's website, which is called Democrats Against Agenda 21, and it's a 2-page handout that I'll be happy to give one to you that, in a nutshell, explains what is Agenda 21, because in reality, it's a very complicated program, something that would control all humans in all the world is quite complicated in detail. Now, the United Nations goal is global socialism. I've been studying the United Nations all of my adult life, and I've condensed it down to that. That's what they want, is global socialism. But socialism is not an American value. And that's why I've dedicated a lot of my life to exposing the UN, and my desire is to rout it from American soil, as I hope yours will be too. I want to point out a new book that was just published a couple of weeks ago by Dick Morris and Eileen McCann called Here Come the Black Helicopters. Some of you may get Dick Morris's noontime videos that you can subscribe to on the internet. They're free. And what I found out just recently when we went to Tallahassee for Freedom from the UN rally that was held at the old Capitol in Tallahassee last Saturday, was it? The organizers of that rally told me that they had been sending information about Agenda 21 to Dick Morris for several months now, and I can tell by watching Dick Morris on his little videos that his eyes have been really opened, but this is what his book looks like. And Nolan and I will be going to Washington, D.C. next month for freshman orientation with the Tea Party Patriots, and Dick Morris is one of the key speakers at our Friday function, so I can't wait to talk to him. But this is a very good source to learn about the United Nations. And I have my homepage set to thenewamerican.com, and this is the latest issue of the magazine, The United Nations on the Brink of Becoming a World Government. Also, Rosa Quar, the gal that wrote the Behind the Green Mask book, sent me a complimentary copy of this book called Unsustainable Cartoons, and I'll have it here if some of you want to see it, but an artist has put together several cartoons illustrating UN bureaucrats trying to take control of all human life. So that's all I have, and I will have handouts if you want them later. Thank you.
Okay, John Quarterman, are you prepared? He's the husband of the chair of the Democratic Party in Lowndes County. So welcome him up to the stage.
This is what I call cross-party collaboration. I'm actually a member of the local Democratic Party committee, and we have Nolan Cox managing the camera for me. Alrighty. So that movie, it mentioned briefly nuclear power, and it painted a rosy picture. Now, we could debate, the technical features of it, and whether it's really doesn't use resources or not. Actually, it uses a lot of water, but let's not get into that. I will want to bring up in my talk that one thing it does is it creates a lot of debt that goes to people on Wall Street. This is, there are handouts on this out there, and it's actually something I've submitted to the newspaper as a letter to the editor. So, if you've been reading the news about solar power, you may have heard that this spring the University of Buffalo turned on 750 kilowatts of solar panels on their front approach, which serves several purposes for them. They get power from it, which means a lower electric bill. It's shade. It's a place where they can show that, look, we can do this right here in Buffalo, which is 1,000 miles north of here. They can do this. I mean, their panels are at 40 degrees because they're that much farther north of our 30 degrees. And Rutgers University in New Jersey has already installed 1.4 megawatts, and this summer they've started working on 8 megawatts. Again, way far north of us. So why don't we have things like that, for example, on the VSU parking lots? Well, partly because VSU hasn't shown much interest, but even if they did, it would be difficult because there's a legal barrier. But let me continue about New Jersey for a moment. In New Jersey, there's a school, Lawrenceville School, that's installed 6 megawatts of solar on high school land owned by the high school. A private company installed it and leases back the power to the school, which is a win-win. They get most of their power that they need for the school, almost all of it. The private company makes a profit, and everybody's happy. Well, possibly not whoever their power company was, but that's a different issue. Right here in Valdosta, if you want to see solar power working, go down to the Mud Creek wastewater plant, 200 kilowatts. It's been installed for close to a year now, I think. Works fine. So one thing you hear around here is people say, well, does that solar power stuff actually work? Yes, it does. You can go see it for yourself. And on my roof, we have 15 kilowatts that works just fine. Okay, now, why can't we do something like what that Lawrenceville school did in New Jersey here in Georgia? Why can't we have, solar parking lots here at Valdosta High School? Why can't we have solar parking lots at Lowndes High, right on 75, where the whole world will see and discover this is a place that does solar, reduces its electricity bills, looks like a place we'd like to locate a business? Because it's illegal in Georgia to do that. It's illegal. You can only sell your power in Georgia to your one and only utility, which has been predetermined for you by the 1973 Territorial Electric Act. And you can look it up if you If the legislature has the bill there online, or look on Lowndes Area Knowledge Exchange, you'll find a lot of stuff about this. Look under solar or nuclear, you'll see the connection in a moment. So you can't do what that school did, not here in Georgia. An attempt to change that in February went to the legislature. It went through 2 different committees. It was pushed by a number of people. The Georgia Solar Energy Association, who obviously want to sell more solar. There's a doctor in Savannah, Dr. Sidney Smith, who's basically been challenging that territorial law by building solar panels in parking lots and selling the power to the businesses that own the parking lots, which is opposed to the letter of the law, and he's been daring them. I have him on video, daring Georgia Power to sue him. Georgia Power won't do it. And I think it's because they think they'll lose. Okay? So, nonetheless, Georgia Power lobbied against that, and it failed in committee. The change to the Territorial Act to make legal what, for example, Sidney Smith is doing, or what the Lawrenceville School is doing in New Jersey, so it could be done here. And, okay, so what is it that Georgia Power is doing that they like so much better than solar power? You may have heard that they're building 2 new nuclear reactors on the Savannah River. Okay, how many of you have Georgia Power as your utility? Okay, look on your electric bill. You'll find something called the Nuclear Construction Cost Recovery Rider, commonly known as construction work in progress. That amounts to about 5% on top of your base electric rate. This is being charged to you because the legislature approved it in 2009. In most states, that's illegal, but not in Georgia and a handful of other states. And it's not just that. It's not just that Georgia Power is charging you a stealth tax on your electric bill. It's also that they got the Public Service Commission to agree that cost overruns on those new nukes on the Savannah River can be passed through to Georgia Power customers. Isn't that a sweet deal? Cost overruns, which are already almost $1 billion. And when David Staples was here, he's running for Public Service Commissioner, he stood up at the forum over at the Rainwater Center and said he had been informed that it looks like there's number 3.5 billion in cost overruns coming, which would be, add all that up, that's like 30% of the original projected cost. Now this is not surprising because those nuclear reactors that are currently on the Savannah River, when they were originally being built, they were supposed to cost $600 million, and there were supposed to be 4 of them. There are actually only 2 of them, and they cost $9 billion. And that's still not all, and that's only 2 legs of the 3-legged stool of finance that Georgia Power and Southern Company have in place for those 2 new reactors. The 3rd stool is they have an $8.3 billion federal loan guarantee. So they charge you for power you're not even getting, they can charge you for cost overruns, and they have a federal loan guarantee for $8.3 billion. If you run the numbers on how much solar you could deploy for that amount of money, it's enough that it would be well more than those nuclear reactors are ever supposed to deliver. They would already be, the solar power would already be online, on time, and on budget. Anyway, this. So what's that got to do specifically with people around here? I've been stomping around a lot of streets lately for reasons many of you know, and people tell me about their power bills. They tell me about $200 a month, $300 a month, even $600 a month for single dwellings. This is ridiculous. Okay, you know, what if instead of all that boondoggle money going to build those reactors on the Savannah River, which may never even be built, what if instead we spent that money on retrofitting houses and on solar panels to put on top of the houses? Then people wouldn't be paying those rates. Okay? Now maybe you might call that a subsidy, maybe you don't want that. What if we just got the 1973 Territorial Electric Act out of the way so that people could get financing to put panels on their houses? My brother, who lives in Tennessee, some of you may know him, he went to school here at Lowndes High. He is currently looking at getting panels put on top of his house in Nashville. He's got 2 solar installers giving him quotes. And they've already put him in touch with several banks who are happy to make him a loan for basically no money down. Almost all of the payments would come from what he'll get from the excess power he's selling the Tennessee Valley Party. And after about 10 years, it'll be paid off, pure profit. Try getting that kind of deal here. You won't be able to. The banks won't give you that deal because they know you can only sell to your one and only electric utility. I have 15 kilowatts on my farm workshop roof, and it's good. I like it. The highest power bill I've ever had, let me see here, $44.49 per month. Some months they owe me. And that's even though when I pay them for the power I pay them 10 cents, they only pay me 4.5 cents. Even at that peculiar rate, I still don't pay anything. Now, I lucked out because I got it's a long story, I'll tell you. I got some financing for most of it, and the rest I could pay out of pocket. It was like a small car, which, okay, that's substantial. And most people can't afford out of pocket to pay as much as a small car when they're already paying on a car. But in many states, you can get financing, but not in Georgia. Okay. If you could, then not only would a lot of people be able to put panels on their roofs, but that would be jobs right here. It would be jobs for the installation. People who do air conditioning or electrical work can easily be retrained to do this. In addition to what they're already doing, there'd be jobs for people delivering the stuff. There'd be jobs for architects designing how to best do it. There'd be jobs for professors to study how well it works. There'd be lots of jobs right here where we need them. Okay, but we can't do that because of that 1973 Act. Right, if we did not have that barrier, then I could, for example, sell my power to somebody in Atlanta or somebody in New York or New Jersey. And I would be happy, I'd get a lot more for the power. The people in Atlanta or New York or New Jersey would be happy because they'd get power for cheaper. And even the utility could be happy because they could take a percentage just for carrying electricity they did not pay 1 cent to put in the first place, and they wouldn't have to install new lines. They're using the same lines that are already there. So it'd be win-win-win. Okay, why don't they want to do that? Because they're making a lot of profit the way they are. Did I mention that three-legged stool of nuclear boondoggle on the Savannah River? If you had a cushy deal like that, would you want to switch to solar? And no, the Southern Company does not. I went to their shareholders meeting in May, and I addressed them with Tom Fanning, their CEO, standing there on the stage, and I brought up some of these issues, and he made it very clear, as he has in a number of policy statements and other places he's spoken, that he just loves renewable energy, solar and wind, and sometime in the next decade or later they'll get around to it. Okay, so what could we do? How can this change? There are 2 people running for Public Service Commissioner for 2 out of the 5 slots, David Staples and Steve Oppenheimer. And they are, unlike the incumbent commissioners, they are not beholden to the electric utilities. The incumbent commissioners, 4 of them take 90% plus of their campaign finances. This is documented, you can look it up, from people who work for the utilities they regulate or their lawyers. The other guy takes about 20%. The 2 people who are running against them, nada. Okay, so that's one place to start. Another place is people running for the legislature, like JC, who was just here. He's aware of this issue, and if we get enough new people in the legislature, people who did not vote for that 2009 law that let that extra stealth surtax charge get on your Georgia power bill, maybe they could revoke that extra stealth surtax charge. That would be the end of the nuke boondoggle, and it would be a wedge to do something about. The legislature could also just simply change the 1973 Act. So, that's what I wanted to talk about. Most people don't hear about this, so now you have. Thank you.
I realized that I didn't introduce myself. I'm Alan Watson, and I'm currently a student at Wiregrass College for clinical lab technology. So I do a little research from time to time on various chemicals and whatnot. So my interest tonight is the fluoridation of the water the city of Valdosta. I am against this, and we've always been told that, oh, fluoride's good for you. It's, you know, the dentist tells you it's, you know, it's good for your teeth, it prevents cavities. Well, there's another side to this story. And so I went to the Valdosta website, City of Valdosta, water quality report, and I pulled that up, got it here. And I actually called yesterday and talked with the superintendent of the plant and found out that, you know, I was trying to find out what exact chemical they were putting in our water, that they were calling fluoride, because they say on the website that it's a contaminant and they label it as fluoride. But that's deceiving, because that is not the chemical that they're putting in our water. And he directed me to the EPD of the state of Albany, which regulates for the state. And if for some reason they don't do a good job of regulation, the EPA will come in and do that for Georgia. It does that. It's not like that for every state, but found out that's what Valdosta is dealing with. And you know, she told me the specific chemical. The lady I talked to, Lisa Blunt actually, and the superintendent is Craig Dozier. But Lisa said that the chemical that we're dealing with is hexafluorosilicic acid. Okay, so they call that fluoride. But if we do more digging on what this actually is, the EPD actually regulates, and EPA actually regulates the amount of contaminant that they can put in our water supply. So it's up to somebody, you know, somebody's, you know, high authority to medicate all of us, your family, your children, everybody. It's been up to the government to dose you because you need it. So I have a problem with that because I didn't consent to that. I do feel like it's an infringement on my liberties. So what I found on this chemical, I'll just call it fluoride, quote unquote, okay, was that it is not necessarily great for your teeth, and even if it was, that you don't need to ingest it. It is good for a topical solution only. Of course, everybody knows, you know, if you look at the back of most of everybody in here, I would suspect, I would love to know that everybody in here wasn't ingesting fluoride or using fluoride toothpaste for that matter, but if you were to look at your toothpaste, you notice that it says that the sodium fluoride in there is a poison, and if you inject a pea-sized amount, to call the Poison Control Center. And this is the same amount that you would find in a glass of water. So why isn't this a big deal? Well, seems to be a huge deal to me. The chemical that we're talking about is considered highly toxic by the EPA and is classified as a hazardous waste. It's labeled as a poison and handled by workers wearing industrial safety gear. And the guy I talked to yesterday, Dozier, he explained that we're spending thousands of dollars to put this in our water. So if we do away with fluoride, we'll be saving thousands of dollars. The quote, you know, from him. And he doesn't carry the weight because he lives in the county. So I care, because if I go into town and want a sweet tea, I don't want to be drinking a hazardous waste. That doesn't need to be there at all. There's no reason it needs to be there. It's over 98% of Europe has banned this chemical, not to mention in many other states. I can't give you the exact number. I looked at a long list of them in the United States that have banned this as well. So I want to implement a petition. I've actually started it earlier tonight for people to sign. And every time you sign this, I started it at change.org. Every time you sign this petition, it will send an email to the city council every time someone signs it. So they will get notice that we are tired of this garbage in our water pretty soon, hopefully. People get people on board. I can't imagine anybody that would love to be dosed, you know. And is there any regulation on that dose if it's an infant? I mean, they even go into talking about how it's not good. You know, you need to consult your doctor if you want to drink this water on the Valdosta website. I mean, it's just amazing. Like, we've been fooled, basically. So anyway, back to the actual uses, where this chemical comes from. Who's supplying us with this chemical, and why is it so necessary that we all have this to prevent cavities? That's what I wanted to know. But through research, you find out that through phosphate mining, it's an important mineral. Phosphate's an important mineral in fertilizers, but it's mined from the phosphate rock and to produce phosphoric acid, which we all know is placed in carbonated sodas, and it's one of the main ingredients. And of course, we now know that drinking a lot of sodas can result in kidney stones and loss of bone mineral density. And this chemical, it used to be released directly from the smokestacks from the mining operations, just directly into the environment. But nearby farms suffered devastating losses of cattle and food crops, which withered away and died due to, guess what? Fluoride poisoning. And so the phosphate mining industry, they put in a way to capture the toxic fluoride chemical vapors so they wouldn't be released into the air and kill surrounding livestock and vegetation. This was accomplished by wet scrubbers that captured the toxic fluoride chemicals, preventing them from being released into the environment and killing the plant and animal life nearby. And it is from these wet scrubbers that toxic fluoride chemicals are now harvested, repackaged, shipped to your local city, and dumped into the municipal water supply. So instead of these toxic fluoride chemicals being released by the phosphate mining smokestacks, they are instead captured and released into the water supply of large cities, where they contaminate the water of millions of people at a time. So, toxic, of course, I went over this again, they're toxic hazardous waste under strict EPA regulations. We are currently supposed to be under 4 parts per million, but Valdosta is currently, and this is actually a table, this is the most current table they have, which is 2011. We are at 0.86, and it says the range is from 0.41 to 1.17, but I think we should be in the range of 0 for this. Let's go into why would they think this is so good for us? I mean, I don't understand, given the percentages here of how much we actually ingest of this water. So it says, research, and it's pretty much common sense, that roughly 99% of the municipal water pumped through any given city ends up in the mouths of people. It never ends up in the mouths of people. You wash with it, you wash dishes, you shower, you wash clothes, watering yards, filling pools. Almost none of that water is ingested and comes in contact with human teeth. It does, however, end up downstream where it contaminates rivers, streams, and ultimately oceans of the world. By a convenient loophole, the phosphate industry can dump its toxic waste byproducts into the environment, without adhering to any EPA regulations whatsoever. The only regulation they do is how much they can put in. They don't regulate that we don't need to be having it at all. So the phosphate mining companies even turn a profit by selling their hazardous waste to cities, labeling it fluoride, even though its name is scientifically inaccurate. It is not fluoride. It is not naturally occurring fluoride. That brings me to a conversation I had with Dozer yesterday. He said that he had to, they were installing a water treatment plant in a city, and they already had naturally occurring fluoride, so they needed to add it. And so I was trying to figure out, well, who's telling you need to add anything? Who's the one saying you have to have fluoride? And pretty much nobody. But it seems like the phosphate mining industry and its cohorts. But one study conducted by the Center for Endemic Disease Control in China found that each additional milligram of fluoride detected in every liter of a child's urine was associated with 0.59 point decrease in their IQ score. Another study found that fluoride exposure slashed number of children achieving high IQs by more than 70%. And one more thing from the Valdosta page. It says some people may be more vulnerable to contaminants in drinking water than the general population. Immunocompromised persons, such as persons with cancer undergoing chemotherapy, persons who have undergone organ transplants, people with HIV, AIDS, or other immune system disorders, Some elderly and infants can be particularly at risk from infections. These people should seek advice about drinking water from their healthcare providers. This is from Valdost's website now. They're telling you to seek medical assistance before you drink our water. That's just ridiculous. And so I made the petition, and I think I pretty much covered everything. There's a lot of studies. I hear there's a lot. I want to say like 24 plus studies that have been done on fluoride and its negative effects. But from what I understand, it ends up in your organs. It doesn't just, you don't just, excrete it. Your body actually retains it. It ends up being in your body. We have become the contamination grounds of this toxic waste, and it just needs to stop. So I appreciate your attention. The next speaker, is going to be RB.
Afraid of my trip. That would have been the ideal thing for me to do. By the way, I'm RB Ashley. I'm kind of, I don't want to say new to Valdosta. I've only lived here for about 4, coming on to 5 years now. And the big thing that, is just great to me is I'm seeing, Democrat people coming out. We're seeing new faces. We did have, the heads of the Republican Party and the Tea Party in here. So obviously there's big things that are happening. And this is a big time in history. This is definitely exciting for me. So, well, first off, I just kind of wanted to give a layout of my local opinion. Valdosta has been an awesome town. I haven't really even thought about leaving. I've given a thought. I'm like, man, I should go off, start somewhere fresh. It's nice. It's nice in here. So, but with that saying, I'm retired military, and I used to think that war was awesome. War was great. We got to travel places and everything else. It wasn't until I actually went to war that I realized really what was happening. When I was deployed in 2009, that's when I kind of started realizing a lot of things, A lot of guys would listen to a lot of crazy music. We were big into the, the stuff, like CCR and everything. And you start seeing different things, in perspectives. And my big question was, if we're fighting a ragtag group, as far as we call these, terrorists, why did my unit, within a 6-month span, set the world record for most munition drops? And I can kind of give you a little reference. We deployed over 375,000 rounds worth of 30 millimeter rounds. We dropped over 85,000 2,000 pound bombs. So my big thing is, who are these people that we're fighting? It can't be just, these guys in the cave that are running around in sandals. That's a lot of people. Well, come to find out, if you're deemed a terrorist, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're deemed a terrorist, if I were to go out and say I was a government informant, I was getting paid the big buku dollars that some of these corporations are handing out, such as Blackwater. Now formally, I think they're now like X3 or something they're called. If I go out and I have an informant, I pay him. And I said, this guy might have guns in his house. Now the time frame where we used to go kick indoors is no longer. Now we're dropping bombs. So my big thing is, we definitely, I feel like the wars need to end. All the wars. When we think about defense of the nation, we should be building bases here. It employs a lot of jobs around the neighboring towns, just as you see as Moody is. But at the same token, when we look at that, we have to be really worried as far as the federal outreach into the communities. I spent a lot of time trying to think about how to word things so I wouldn't scare people off and start hearing the door slap in the back. My big thing is federal outreach into the communities to further, expand the global governments, as we would call it, or just federal government in general. which, is no longer our federal government. But I had brought up to attention to Alan about the new Sheriff's Department program that they're calling SPEED. Now, I don't know if you guys have been wandering around town and noticed a couple of the checkpoints that have been popping up. These are going to be mandatory. You're not going to get out of this. Actually, this will probably be within 2013. You'll be seeing a lot of this. It doesn't matter if you're considered, a legal immigrant, or you're a citizen, or you're a Valdosta citizen. It doesn't matter. Your thing is now, you will have to provide papers. This has all been set up, and it's all been designed strictly off the Afghan war and the Iraq war. It's all blueprints. If you look at them strategically, it's all blueprints. And that's why I totally agree with Diane when she said that this is a socialistic takeover. I'm a little bit more, hardcore into believing that it's full-on communism, but it's like anything. If I were to rob your house and you caught me trying to come through your front window, I would change it up. I wouldn't come through the front window no more. Maybe next time I won't be able to have that opportunity. So communism has definitely learned. They've adjusted their tactics. And just like the video said, we're going to let the people think they're going to be free. And this is how they moved in. And, especially when we look at either Republican or Democrat parties, we've seen that they've gone away from the American voice. And we're looking at now it's whoever can shell out the biggest dollars. And you look at George Bush, you look at Clinton, or you look at Obama, or, even if Romney comes in, the big thing now is talking about who are we going to bomb next. Well, it shouldn't be talking about who we're going to bomb next. It should be how are we going to save our country. we're about to rot. It's rotting inside out. We have no jobs. I don't know if you guys saw the headlines. Jeep is now going to be built in China. That's what the thing is. But perpetual war is definitely a booming business. And a lot of veterans, a lot of my buddies, they don't have job options when they get out. Actually, what they have gone and done is signed up with government contracts to go back straight into fighting again. So you're just getting paid as a civilian, but you do the same thing. I just had 5 of my guys that I used to work with. One of them, he was a supervisor of mine. He is now in Saudi Arabia teaching Saudi Arabians how to load and disperse weapons with our old F-16s. So, like I said, the thing is, the war is continuing. It needs to stop. And I think, especially when we look at the war in general, it's going to eventually spill home. We're going to piss off the wrong people. Iran is definitely not somebody to be playing with. Our forces are spread too thin. We can't do it. And if we get into this defense posture with Iran, you're going to see the war spill home. And that's my big thing. I definitely don't want that. And but moving on to the local movement, this is great. A lot of big things have been happening. Especially with the total global enslavement, I guess you would call it, is they're meeting resistance everywhere. Whether it be in Tampa that banned fluoride, they had over 1 million signatures to ban fluoride. They got it out of their water to clean. Into the state of Georgia, where you had Nolan Cox, he stomped out T-Splosh, stop the tax. That's good stuff. And just here tonight, just seeing new faces, and this is a big thing for us. So we're definitely glad for everyone to come out. And if you hear anything, especially that sparks your interest, get active, definitely. And my big thing is, when we look at the military, I'm going to leave you with a couple of quotes. Their slogans, I should say now. The Air Force's slogan is Global Air Power. The Navy's slogan is Global Sea Power. All right? And the Army and the Marines, they're still trying to figure that one out. But you can kind of guess, And like I said, I just want to thank everyone. And if you'd like to learn more, anything about the military-industrial complex, which is ever growing, and want to learn more about what's going on as far as that into our city, definitely come ask me. And just look up Dwight D. Eisenhower, what he said about the military-industrial complex right before he made his exit speech. Thank you.
We just have two more. We've got Eric Bell and K.R. Sauls, and here's Eric now.
Hi, it's great to see you. I joined Charles Tash and say it's great to see literally tens and tens of people. Anyway, yes, thank you for coming. I especially want to thank Bill Shanahan and Margaret Shanahan and Roberts for coming here. I've known for about 10 years now. Bill is the assistant city manager of Augusta, correct? That's your official title? Okay. Anyway, well, what the main objective of this event is we planned for a lot more, obviously, but well, whatever, is to introduce ourselves to the community and tell us what we're about. And one of the causes that we will fight tooth and nail for is for the defense and restoration of our civil liberties. One of my biggest philosophical influences the former presidential candidate and constitutional scholar Michael Badnarik. In all his speeches, well, most if not all, he always brings to the point, where is your line? It's like, how much more do they have to do to you before you get pissed off enough to actually speak out and do something about it? When Hitler came to power, he came into power with a 98% voter turnout for him. 98% people voted for him. He didn't get elected on Monday and start throwing Jews into the oven on Friday. It came very, very gradual. First, he started issuing these newspaper articles on blaming the Jews for all the problems that caused in Germany. And that, of course, but then, to my knowledge, the Jews didn't go and say, well, issue counter arguments saying, hey, I disagree here. It's not all our faults. Then they start giving the Star of David's and make them, of course, post in front of their businesses that they're Jews, of course, and that no one's, of course, said, hey, this is an invasion of our privacy. So it's none of your business if I'm a Jew. And then, of course, they broke all the windows of every Jewish business and home. It was called Kristallnacht, the night of 1,000 glass. I believe that is the translation of that. Anyway, and then, of course, they started rounding them up and taking them to the death camps. At that point, it's too late to speak up. So, where's your line? When federal agents claim the power to go through your emails, go through your financial statements, go through your medical records, your gun controls, what you read, what books you check out from the library, or when the Congress passes a bill to allow for 30,000 drones to surveil you in American skies. Or when they pass the National Defense Authorization Act, which gives them, the federal government, power to detain you and me without trial, without any due process. Or when the president claims the power to kill you without due process. I ask you, is it time then, or would you then, are you ready to speak? Did they cross your line? And so, okay. Let's go quicker than I thought. So what do we do now? Of course, the thing we have to do is educate. We use whatever form we can. Obviously, I would hope that LibertYOUtbreak becomes very, very viable and active in the community and addresses the issues. And if you want to help us, please, by all means, come. The Tea Party, the Occupy Wall Street movement, your Facebook, which should be very vigilant against against government intrusion into the internet for that exact reason. And of course, you have to confront. The example was RB and Allen, of course, at the Georgia District 8 convention when Austrians and Scots spoke at our luncheon, and he yelled out, "What about the NDAA? What about the 30,000 drones that you voted for?" He realized that not too long ago that we were going to be a thorn in his side. So about maybe a month or so later, he actually issued a bill curbing the use of drones, saying that we would not be able to use them without a search warrant. And you could, of course, the next thing, of course, is we resist, and for one, there are about, I think, 3 different states that have bills for nullifying the NDAA, and learn the word nullification. Wish JC was here to say, when you consider voting for him, make sure he knows that word, his opponent, and if he doesn't learn it when he goes to Atlanta, find someone that does. And but of course, first off, you have to get anything before you do anything. Before you're free anywhere else, you have to be free here. You have to make up the conscious effort, a conscious decision that where your line is and when you're not going to comply to, and whether or not free and how much liberty really means to you. And I guess that's about it. Thank you. Hope I got you good and pissed off.
AR solves. Last but not least, of course, you got an excellent definition of liberty.
Good evening. I'm going to start off with a quote from Frederick Bastiat. It seems to me that this theoretically right for whatever the question under discussion, whether religious, philosophical, political, or economic, whether it concerns prosperity, morality, equality, right, justice, progress, responsibility, cooperation, property, labor, trade, capital, wages, taxes, population, finance, or government. At whatever the point on the scientific horizon I begin my researches, I invariably reach this one conclusion. The solution to the problems of human relationships is to be found in liberty. Away with the whims of governmental administrators, their socialized projects, their centralization, their tariffs, their government schools, their state religions, their free credit, their bank monopolies, their regulation, their restrictions, their equalization by taxation, and their pious moralizations. And now that the legislators and do-gooders have so futilely inflicted so many systems upon society, may they finally end where they should have begun. May they reject all systems and try liberty. So what is liberty? Liberty is the freedom to act with respect only to second and third party rights, slave only to those limitations enacted by the Creator or nature. Breaking down this definition, notice that the word freedom has been used not as a synonym of liberty, but as a mere piece of the overall definition of the term. What does this mean? Liberty is not freedom, and freedom is not liberty. Certainly there exists a relationship between the terms, but the terms are mutually exclusive. One can exist with freedom in his or her everyday life and not enjoy liberty. Liberty is the complete ownership of oneself in action, while one can be a slave to others and still retain freedom. An example, a man imprisoned in his cell, does he possess liberty? Does he possess freedom? Let's answer the last first. This man, locked away from the world and all he held dear, retains freedom. Do not confuse his loss of liberty for a loss of freedom. No, this man possesses freedom, even as he is a slave. He is free to move about in his cell. He is free to think. He is free to breathe the air, to whistle a song, to use his toiletries, to read his books, and on and on. Certainly these freedoms could be further limited up to and including the ultimate restriction, which would be execution. But he retains a measure of freedom up to that point. But this man has lost his liberty the minute he was in prison. In order for this man to enjoy liberty, he must retain the freedom to act in any manner he sees fit with respect to the rights of others. If one is unable to act in such a manner, he or she has lost liberty while retaining freedom. Liberty is a state. And as true with all other states, Think of a light switch, on and off. It only has two states. One either possesses liberty or one does not. The saying that a woman can't be a little pregnant comes to mind. She either is or she is not. One cannot be a little dead. One either is or one is not. The question then becomes personal. Do you desire to live in a state of liberty? I'm not going to stand here and tell you that mankind has ever existed in a true state of liberty, because I'm not one to make wild claims with no verification or evidence of the truth. That said, mankind has periodically made great strides in an effort to make that state of being a reality, only to see those efforts erode over a period of years. Historically, this has been an observable truth. In the past millennium, we can note that beginning in 1100 with the Charter of Liberties in England, up to the American Declaration of Independence, there were many moves by the people to limit the authority of those entities which govern them and their actions. Sadly, we must note that this process has been repetitive. But why is this so? The arc of government is one that bends from liberty towards tyranny. This is an observable truth to the student of history. I would postulate that this occurs for a conglomeration of reasons. However, it is allowed to occur usually because there has been a period of time in which the enlightened view of liberty and what it entails has been purposely blurred. Instead of moving toward liberty and justice for all, the people lose their moral compass and allow their government to become a golem that attempts to be all things to all people until it eventually enslaves everyone to a bastardization of collectivist thought. Frederick Bastiat, the great philosopher and author of the Law, gave us a simple guide to test whether or not a people were living under the tyranny of others via its governance. See if the law takes from some persons what belongs to them and gives it to other persons to whom it does not belong. See if the law benefits one citizen at the expense of another by doing what the citizen himself cannot do without committing a crime. Does your government pass this test? This is a question that all who seek liberty must answer for themselves, but one thing must be clear. Liberty is a complete mechanism made up of tiny cogs of freedom. Take away just one cog and the mechanism does not work. It is for this reason that mankind should not allow the definitions of these two mutually exclusive terms to be blurred into a single unit. It is this blurring that moves the people away from liberty and into the waiting arms of tyranny. One would do well to remember that a liberated people and a liberated government cannot coexist. Where the void of liberty is ignored by one, it will be filled by the other. This simply means that one will necessarily be the tyrant of the other. One will be a slave and the other will be the master. One chains the other, always. It is up to mankind to remove itself from the belief that it is its government. As shown, nothing could be further from the truth. You are not your government, and your government is not you. Awaken yourself to this knowledge, and you will be awake to the difficult yet necessary task at hand. In order to claim our birthright, the people must remove from itself those chains placed upon them in the name of government, and use them to properly restrain the institution itself. Again, from Bastiat. Ah, you miserable creatures, you who think that you are so great, you who judge humanity to be so small, you who wish to reform everything. Why don't you reform yourselves? That task would be sufficient enough. Although written some 160 years ago, these words are just as relevant today and form the core of this event tonight. Each and every speaker here has presented unto you an issue which threatens to swing the pendulum of liberty even further into the favor of those who seek to rule mankind. They are in effect speaking to the one person who can force such people to reform themselves, as Bastiat suggests, you. You have a voice. It belongs to you and is more powerful when backed by truth in favor of liberty than you can imagine. But what is your voice? How and when can you use it? First, let me explain to you what your voice is not by telling a quick story. Recently, I was in conversation with a few people, none of whom I knew personally, about the upcoming presidential election. When someone within the conversation suggested that they would be abstaining from casting a presidential ballot, another stood aghast at what had been said. This person went on to exclaim that the right to vote is a person's voice. This struck me as perhaps one of the more misinformed statements I had ever been a party to. Your vote is your voice? How terrible would that be? A vote is but one very small component of your voice. To suggest otherwise would be to claim that your voice is to be heard once a cycle, and then you are to remain silent in the period between. No, your voice is everything that you do and say. It is how you carry yourself, who you conspire with, what you buy, where you lay your head. Your voice is never ending, and despite what others would have you believe, it is very, very powerful. Like freedom to liberty, your enlightened voice is the basic building block of true and everlasting revolution against tyranny, wherever it is to be found. So, how should this powerful tool be used? The power of your voice comes from your ability to combine it with others to build its volume. When your voice is one in a sea of 350 million, it is muted almost to the point of obscurity, so it must be combined with others to be noticed. Each speaker here tonight has presented unto you an issue of freedom that is a component of liberty. Where we succeed with one, we move closer to the overall goal. Each of us come from different backgrounds and possibly share different views on the principles of governance. However, we have chosen not to focus on any possible differences. No, we have chosen instead to unite and celebrate our commonalities because each of us see more value in such an action. We are uniting our voices in the name of liberty, and we welcome you to join your voice with ours. The power to reclaim one's liberty from the federal government cannot come until one's voice has been heard at the state level. The power to reclaim one's liberty from the state cannot come until one's voice has been heard at the district. And the district will ignore one's voice until it has been heard at the local level. And none of this matters unless you reform yourself. The outbreak of liberty must start somewhere, and that somewhere is within you. You are the basic building block of any movement. And as you work to combine your voice with others within your community, your friends, your neighbors, your associates, your family, you will notice the outbreak occurring. If you make the reforms, the change will come at each successive level. Your voice cannot be ignored unless you fail to grow it. You are in charge. The power is yours. The liberty outbreak has to begin with you. In closing, I would like to thank everyone in attendance for their participation tonight. I would like to thank my fellow speakers. I would like to thank Alan for putting this event together. I would like to leave with one final thought from Frederick Bastiat. We hold from God the gift which includes all others. This gift is life, physical, intellectual, and moral life. But life cannot maintain itself alone. The Creator of life has entrusted us with the responsibility of preserving, developing, and perfecting it. In order that we may accomplish this, He has provided us with a collection of marvelous faculties, and He has put us in the midst of a variety of natural resources. By the application of our faculties, these natural resources, we convert them into products and use them. This process is necessary in order that life may run its appointed course. Life, faculties, productions. In other words, individuality, liberty, and property. This is man. And in spite of the cunning of artful political leaders, these three gifts from God precede all human legislation and are superior to it. Life, liberty, and property do not exist because men have made laws. On the contrary, it was the fact that life, liberty, and property existed beforehand that men made laws in the first place. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out, and this is the conclusion of the Liberty Outbreak event, and just pat yourselves on the back because you are vigilant. It is you. You is emphasized when we spell Liberty Outbreak together. It's in the middle, plain as day. You are the source of the solution to whatever is going on in the community. So this is meant to be an open forum, a nonpartisan forum, and it is meant to address issues that attack our liberty. And I don't see it doing anything but growing as of right now because I just keep seeing government increasing in size. So thank you all for coming out, and it went a little longer than what we thought it would be, but that's okay. Hope everybody enjoyed the movie and the speakers. So we will plan our next event according to the events that go on in the Valdosta High School. They have priority, of course. It's not all about Liberty Outbreak. I wish it was, but it's not. So we have to work around that. But We've got a great, coordinator of the facility, Terry Roundtree. I'd like to thank him. And he waved, he heard you. So he's responsible for helping us out with this, with the sound and everything, and the projector and stage. So we have a great opportunity here. We almost did not have this opportunity. We got confronted by the superintendent, who thought this was going to be Obama bashing for some reason, due to a flyer that was placed on a vehicle. It was about Stop Dictator Obama, but I just want to assure everyone that's not what this is about. It's not about boosting up one particular candidate, one particular party. This is nonpartisan. This is just citizens of the community that are concerned with various issues that go on continually, it seems like. But so just try to bring more people next time, and I'm not disappointed at all. I'm pretty sure some people learned something here at this event, so I know I did. And hopefully you take that with you and spread liberty.
Thank you.